as you go out into the ocean, of course, it's bad too. And what happens is the radiation concentrates or is washed out of the atmosphere with the rain and the snow, and it melts, and then it drifts into the groundwater and gets into the rivers. So especially when those kind of things happen, you get higher amounts of radiation in the rivers and then in the fish that are in the water.
And they're finding the radiation in the river and lake silt, the mud.
Right.
It's accumulating in the mud.
Yes, that's where it seems to be dropping into. It's not just diluting into the water. It doesn't seem to be working that way.
Even if they stopped all of the leaking right now, 100% stopped, the damage is already done.
It would help, though, if they could do that.
Well, it would help, but the damage is already done. I mean, you can't go out there with a sponge and soak up
no, but the
radiation.
thing is, at least you could. Yes, but the thing is, you could at least stop that radiation from continuing to go out to the Pacific and basically contaminate the entire Pacific Ocean, the entire Pacific Basin, like half the planet, which really is what's happening. So if they could stop the leaks, that would help. But according to some of the information I just received, the government said that TEPCO is not responsible to entomb the plants, the reactors, and neither is the government. But what happened at Chernobyl was they sent in about 700,000 liquidators, quote unquote. Many of them got liquidated, of course. Mostly conscripts from the various armed services, and they had to go in, and they're the ones that did the work to make a sarcophagus, which is what they used to entomb the Chernobyl plant, which is only one plant, only one reactor compared to the 4 that are on the grounds at Fukushima. And then that would help. Of course, today, it's 26 years after the accident in Chernobyl, that sarcophagus is leaking. And they're begging for money, the Ukraine, for help to make another one.
And we don't know what's going on below these reactors.
No, we don't. And the unfortunate thing is, well, we do know there's tons of radioactive water. That's what we know.
Yes.
We do know that the first 3 plants have had meltdowns, numbers 1, 2, and 3, and then they poured water in there and I think they have to keep doing it, and then there's still leaks in all of the plants and the walls, so that water that's going in to cool the cells of fuels, that continues to go in, and the leaks come out the bottom. So it's still going on. So we don't know exactly what's going on there, but we know enough to say that it's leaking. It's leaking, it's getting into the groundwater, and it's just continuing to make this vicious cycle.
And then we have the real and present danger of reactor number 4 with bulging walls. The building is tilting. It's structurally very weakened. A typhoon, when Japan is in the typhoon season right now, a typhoon could finish this thing off. Another earthquake, magnitude 7 or higher, definitely will bring this thing down. Maybe
even less.
Or even less.
It just has to actually, a little more background on that fuel pool number 4. This is from Fairwinds, which is Arnie Gunderson's site.
Right.
He says that what they did, they put a tarpaulin over the top, which sounds like that would at least prevent things from just going up into the air. But he said it doesn't really do that. It's really to protect the fuel. It's the fuel pool, not the reactor. That's the problem, right? Mm-hmm. It's the fuel pool that's sitting up there about 100 feet up, and that's what's tilting. And that has all the fuel assemblies in it. And what they're trying to do is keep that covered, because if it gets uncovered, if the fuel assemblies get uncovered, then they could have a criticality result, and then you could have the fire, and then the fire can release all that cesium, and that cesium is somewhere between 8 and 10 million curies, I think it was. 8 to 10 times the amount of cesium released by Chernobyl, that's what it is. And, of course, that would be disastrous for the planet, because it would just go all around the planet in the air. But what they're doing is that they would have to, according to Mr. Gunderson, they would have to, the plan would be to get a cask into the fuel pool somehow, which they'd have to use a special crane, not a construction crane, that has to hold 150 tons at least. They have to get it into the fuel pool to get some of the assemblies into the cask. That's what they would have to do, which I don't know if they figured out how to do it yet. That's why they haven't done it. Otherwise, if they drop it, if they drop the cask, it'll probably go right through the fuel pool and fall straight through. You know, if it's 150 tons, it'll probably go right through the fuel pool, right down to the bottom of what's left of the reactor, and that'll make a hole in the fuel pool, drain all the water out, and boom, there you go.
How is this affecting you personally?
Well, I'm very paranoid, you know. I'm happy I'm not in California right now because obviously a little more of the fallout from this has gone there. And I'm a surfer, and I've surfed all around the world, and I lived in Hawaii for a while, but I don't really want to ever go to the Pacific Ocean again. That's how it's affected me mostly. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to eat tuna anymore. I don't want to eat anything out of the Pacific Ocean anymore. It may not be bad, you know. Some things you get may be okay, and some things you don't know. It doesn't take much, you know, to cause a little mutation and a cancer in your DNA. So people have to be aware of this, and that's one of the reasons they're not talking about it. I mean, the taboo against reporting nuclear news has long been present in the media. But for this not to get reported the way you just opened the show, with all the things you said, none of that's being said. So it's really, like you say, it's a crime, really, to not report those things, make a deal to let the food imports come from Japan and not test them. Don't test the fish because you don't want to know, because then you'll have it on record. I mean, it's all pretty sick.
That's right.
It's pretty sick. I mean, the main answer, obviously, is that nuclear power has to stop. Has to be when Fukushima happened. That should have been it. That should have been, the world should have just said, okay,
shut them all down.
Get it. Yeah, that's it. They should be all shut down. Japan shut all their reactors down.
But now they're restarting them.
They're trying to restart the two in Ojai. Mm-hmm. And what happened was the people there are angry, and they were surrounding the prime minister's house every day. And they were going to open them. I don't know what happened. I can't tell you. It's the fifth now. They were opening them in Ojai. There was 2 reactors on July 1st. And the crowd around the prime minister's house had gotten up to 45,000 people protesting around his house so that he wouldn't do it. But, of course, whatever he's doing, he's going to do it anyway.
Isn't it amazing how these politicians, regardless of what country they're in, they just completely ignore the mass of people? They just do what they want to do. I mean, they do what they're told to do. That's really what it comes down to. They don't work for the people. They work for very powerful individuals and organizations and corporations and entities, and they don't really care what the people say.
Well, some do and some don't. The prime minister who was active during the event on March 11th, I think he's trying to stop nuclear power. He was, but then they try to blackball him away from doing that, and now the new prime minister is trying to get them open. Of course, like you say, pushed by industry, because Ojai is in one of the most important industrial districts of Japan, and so they wanted those reactors open. But what the Japanese people, they have a different culture there. So the federal government doesn't quite rule as tightly over each area as it does in the United States. And there, the local people decide they don't want to open a reactor. Each reactor to reopen is going to be an individual battle, it looks like at this point. And it turns out, from what I've read, that the Japanese mafia doesn't want them to open. I don't know exactly why. Probably because if they probably want to try to sell what they have, and then, you know, the reactors going back online and more contamination results, another Fukushima.
Well, you know, that's another thing I've read about, products coming out of Japan, food products and other things that have been relabeled.
Oh, Oh, they relabeled. I didn't know that.
I've read these stories that the products have been relabeled.